Hello, and welcome to another episode of Balanced Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce you now. Noah Fritz is a mindset coach, author, and personal trainer. Noah is passionate about animal-based nutrition for athletic performance, the role of seasonal carbohydrates, and the relationship between what we consume and our spirituality and connection to nature. Noah is the author of The Return to Nature, Ancestral Principles to Achieve Vitality, Longevity, and Wholeness. The Return to Nature teaches its readers how to permanently stave off unwanted weight and effortlessly add muscle with three simple concepts: how the power of your environment easily cultivates healthier habits in all domains of life, an underlying pattern that repeats itself across history and across cultures, even in your daily life and in your physiological function, and how recognizing and embracing this pattern will bring you greater peace and deeper meaning as you go about achieving your goals, whether they relate to physical health, athletic performance, or relationships of any kind. You can connect with Noah on Instagram at Anabolis, and that's at ANAB0LAS. Noah Fritz, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
It's a pleasure to be here, Casey. Thank you for having me.
It's such an honor to host you. We were just talking a little bit offline about your work and everything that you write about. And I love the title of your book, which I really want to talk about. But we
Hmm.
also were just kind of chatting about how you work with what you consider holistic health. But really, that it's not, we don't even need the word holistic. It's just health. There's so many aspects to this that we just have really lost as a culture, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah, and you said it just perfectly there. Um, Health is inherently, the term is inherently all encompassing of not just what you're eating and how you're moving, but it's everything beyond that too. I mean, those are just like tips of the iceberg in a way. It's what you're eating and how you're moving. It's also what kind of what's the light environment in which you live? How much sun are you getting? What is your electromagnetic environment too? Like, are you living in an urbanized, popularized area with these 5G and high internet speed cell towers that are emitting these high frequency electromagnetic waves? We can get into that as well, talking about your heat exposure, your cold exposure. Are you living with the seasons? Like it's these bigger concepts, and when you understand all of these things are belonging to you, because it's all ultimately connected. All of your systems that we hear about in our body, in our mind, and our body are connected as well. It's you don't necessarily holistic health is a fine term for that because it is holistic, but you don't necessarily have to have that term. It is just health. So
It's just health. Yeah, no, I love that. And I can attest to that personally living through the winter that I've lived through. I'm sure my audience is so sick of hearing me complain about the weather here in Salt Lake City this year. We inherited a sauna this last summer, and I would say that has been an amazing saving grace around here. And
mm,
this winter, I really haven't changed my diet. I do strict carnivore and I keep, my food's about the same. My movement is
yeah,
about the same, probably a little lower than it would be in the summer, just not walking as much when I'm out shoveling snow. But dude, I'll tell you, I have gotten far less light exposure than I normally get at this time of the year. And it's really dragging me down. I have to say, like that one little thing that we call a little thing is
yeah.
really throwing me off. It's really important to have all of those aspects that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm interested to hear too is more about because you said you're a strict carnivore, so you're obviously, you're eating naturally, probably lesser carbohydrate, zero carbohydrate even. And I'm curious as to because where you're living right now in the winter in Utah with that snow, that's pretty, I would say, seasonally appropriate. I'm curious too as to like how you've managed and how the your light environment has been. Talk a little bit more about that with sun exposure, and just owning a business and a podcast, like we're being the busy people that we are in this world, trying to balance right the work life and also like having returning more to an ancestral environment of not having this artificial light that we create indoors where we can be up at all hours of the night now.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It makes a really, really big difference.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated that you were able to tackle so many different aspects of health. But let's hear about your own personal story. How did you first get interested in health to begin with?
So I would say it came from just a background in, yeah, the first thing that goes to mind is athletics. I've been a lifelong athlete in football and baseball, played basketball when I was younger, but always being outdoors. And yeah, it came from, I guess you could say, a performance standpoint initially of how can I optimize my my exercise regimens. How can I, and then that went on to like, well, I need to dial in my nutrition now. And then my sleep came to be a part of that as well. And then over the course of my life, I would say starting around the past 5, 6 years ago, that kind of shifted, and the perspective shifted as to being less concerned with, let's say, athletic performance and sports performance, but more so just living with more connection to nature. I've always had something else about me is I remember throughout my entire childhood, I grew up living in the woods and loving to be out in nature in solitude with myself. I've always enjoyed that aspect, and connecting with the animals, like our food, where we're getting our food from, connecting with those things that we consume, plant or animal. And so that kind of it's more or less now it's not as much performance based, but now it's more just connection, I would say, and living more consciously, more aware of our connection again to the earth, to our bodies, to where we come from, which is why I title it "The Return to Nature," because it's understanding where we come from, and understanding that, and integrating those principles into this modern lifestyle that we have can really heal a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I'm curious to know how you were able to find what you and I would probably both consider the correct information when it comes to a lot of those things. Because I would imagine if you go to Google and type in health and fitness, you're probably going to get a
Mm-hmm.
calorie tracker, and you're probably going to get some workout program where you're running on a treadmill or something. So how
Yeah.
were you able to connect true health with all of those things you were already feeling as a child, with like the connection to nature and all that stuff?
Mm. I would say, I mean, in part, I guess this is always a part of it, is intuition. Just intuitively kind of listening to certain voices in the health sphere and the nutrition sphere. The first one that comes to mind for me that really opened my eyes to the necessity for proper research, and just for really delving into uh, mechanisms and understanding, the nuanced aspects behind not just what's being presented in an epidemiological study, let's say, or like observational studies, but actually looking at how we conduct more quality research and understand the different nutritional protocols, exercise protocols, etc. Was Paul Saladino with his Fundamental Health podcast that he opened a few years ago. I started listening to that right around the time he kind of, right before he wrote his book, even, I think, The Carnivore Code. And yeah, he was just a very knowledgeable guy, very smart guy. Had a lot of good guests on. I remember just diving into his podcast and discussing the nuanced aspects of anatomy and physiology when it comes to nutrition. And working in school myself as a research undergraduate, so I was very mindful, let's say, of not just accepting an observational study again, which is a lot of how our nutritional data is conducted, and so, but more looking at quality research, and looking at the methodologies behind how we conduct research, what are the controls, and so that's kind of allowed me to use that same process to cite references for my book and to write the book.
Yeah, that's fantastic. He also helped me quite a bit in my understanding of how to dig into some of those studies. And it really sucks because every other week there's a new headline that
Mm-hmm.
says such and such is bad for you. It's going to kill you. Heart disease, keto and low carb diets are driving heart disease, and
Mm-hmm.
will give you heart
Yeah.
attacks. It was one of the latest ones that I saw. And all my clients come to me because they see the headlines. It gets run in the local news, and like they don't understand what you were mentioning, like observational studies or how these things are done. Can you talk just a little bit more about how poor some of these studies really are, and
Yeah.
how they're getting all the headlines to get everybody's attention?
Yeah. So an epidemiological study, or an observational based study, and a lot of our prior nutritional data over the past 50, or that was conducted 50 or 60 years ago now, that kind of started these misconceptions regarding, let's say, saturated fat consumption, its correlation to heart disease with Ansel Keys and the 7 country studies, stuff like that. Those are observational based studies. And what an observational study is in regards to nutrition specifically, let's say, is let's just have people kind of recollect what it is they've been eating over the past 2 or 3 years and try and correlate that with certain foods. And it's hard to remember unless you're rigorously tracking it what you ate within the past week. A lot of times, much less years ago. And also observational studies, they don't take into mind something like a healthy user bias, where they're not taking in other lifestyle factors that go into playing to what causes heart disease or cancer or neurodegeneration, what you may do. So while nutrition, they might be eating poor foods, this group might be eating healthier foods, but yeah, the ones that are more prone to eating quote unquote healthy or quote unquote unhealthy foods are also more prone to living quote unquote unhealthy or quote unquote healthy lifestyles. So those are two big ones that are flawed, or come up in observational studies where they're very flawed.
Yeah, that's super well explained. For the listener, I've seen some of these. They're called food frequency questionnaires. And
Yes.
it is like a survey. And you go through and you circle the little thing like a Scantron test in high school. Like, how
Yep.
often per week do you consume X food? And it could be 2 times a day or 1 time a day or 3 times a week or whatever. And the options that they give you is like apple, one, orange, 1 or 1/2 cup orange juice, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whoever has consumed a half cup of orange juice ever in their life. Normally it's like a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Cold cereal, slice of pizza, one, cookie, one. There's no like detail there. So not only are you not going to remember it, but like what kind of a cookie? Are you talking about 10 Oreos? Are you talking about a giant sugar cookie at the store down the street that also sells the bucket of soda? They're
Right.
terrible. They're horribly, horribly inaccurate. They wouldn't give
Yes.
you any good data to begin with, and they're basing these studies based on those observations that you talked about to come up with conclusions that are preposterous.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at, I forgot where I've seen this before, but they have hierarchies of, and you learn this in school actually, and when you get into researches, they show hierarchies of studies. And the observational study, those are the base level studies that you conduct to kind of just get the ball rolling, right? To kind of just start formulating a certain direction for how you will conduct further, more quality research, where you get into like you get the cohort studies or the longitudinal studies, and you have the randomized control trials, and then you have meta-analyses. But the problem with meta-analyses, if you're doing a meta-analysis over observational studies, which is just, and a meta-analysis for anyone listening is like a study of studies, so it's collecting all of these different studies and kind of coming to a conclusion from there, which is considered a meta-analysis being the top tier level of research. But again, if you're using these observational studies and you're trying to collect a bunch of them and trying to come to this conclusion, the data itself each study itself is flawed to begin with, which is again where we come to today, where it's just so ingrained in people, all of these misconceptions. And it's to kind of go back to like the connection element that I seek, it's a lack of connection, I think, to people with where they come from, and just not understanding, like, you don't have to listen to a researcher or someone in a lab coat or someone conducting studies to tell you what is more or less healthy, when it's just very well more about understanding your history, let's say, and just learning about anthropology and your past ancestral environment and how that may have looked. And because when you situate yourself in an environment that's more akin to your ancestors, where they lived thousands of years ago, hunter-gatherer type societies, in a lot of cases today, that will amass healing for people. Now, the question is today, to what degree can you integrate that in your life, which is again why the book was written.
Well, a perfect segue. I want to talk about the book, and I want to start
Yeah.
with the title, which I love the title. Can you talk about why you chose those 4 words specifically when you gave your book a title?
Mm. I selected that title, The Return to Nature, because it's just that it's the way forward in your health. So the way that we get healthier today as people, the way we progress, is by returning. It's one of those paradoxical things where, like, to go forward, we got to go backward. Um, and there's a quote that I write, or that I cite rather, in the first chapter of the book. It's by a Swiss psychologist, Carl Jung, and the quote reads, "No tree can reach into heaven unless its roots reach down into hell. And I'm pointing at this tree of life behind me. So that's why there's another meaning there. So in order to kind of ascend, let's say, to these heavenly states of health that we want in our lives, these dream lives of ours, we have to simultaneously to ground ourselves and root ourselves in our body, our physical function. You can think about this as well. In order to grow the power of your mind, let's say your higher intellectual faculties, you have to also tend to, or equally tend to, your roots in your body and your physiological function, your physical health, in order to improve your mental and spiritual health. So
Yeah, I love that.
that's where that comes from.
I love that. I love the word return. I love the word nature. And we kind of have this idea of like we're always progressing. We're always like learning. We get better iPhones every year and cooler cars and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we do need to return to where we were because our health is just so poor out there. And so, yeah, again, I love the concepts of the book. Let's talk about, let's go in a priority order of what you think is the most important to talk about, be it nutrition, exercise and movement,
Mhm.
connection, mindfulness. Where do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so in the book itself, the way in which I ordered it was I broke it. I started kind of by chapter wise, but going from more of the most important, I would say, if in going down into the least important. Now they're all included because they all have their part and their role. Just like you have a heart, you have a brain, you have a liver, you have a thought, you have all these parts of your body that play vital roles. But where I started in the book was with light, water, and magnetism. Now these are Dr. Jack Cruz. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He wrote the
Amazing work.
Epipaleo RX, and kind of introduced me to the quantum biology and understand the importance of our light environment and our electromagnetic environment. So I start with that premise, like light and water and magnetism are being the holy trinity of your health, of your physical health. And so it's dialing in. We can start with there. It's dialing in your light exposure, clean water, and what it means to be hydrated, and grounding, electromagnetic connection to the earth, which is we can talk about grounding as well.
Yeah, well, let's start with light. What kinds of lights should we try to include more of in our life, and which ones should we try to reduce?
Yeah, so you've probably heard this term before, blue light. And essentially what blue light is when you hear that term, it's referring to artificially made fluorescent lighting, that bright white lighting when you walk into whatever it could be in your living space, wherever, inside buildings at night. It's often the case you have this fluorescent bright lighting. It is a light that oscillates at a frequency. It makes the color blue in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's in that blue frequency. So that's why it's called blue light. And the problem with a lot of blue light is that is that same frequency of light is in the sun. And but that light is also contained within what's called full spectrum sunlight. So it contains all of those colors of the rainbow of that electromagnetic spectrum in the sun. However, when you have artificial light, there's no red, there's no yellow, there's no orange, there's none of those lower frequencies of light. And that's very problematic, especially when you don't receive a lot of the red frequencies like in sunrise and sunset from the sun. So if you're living inside all day underneath artificially constructed lighting, and you're not seeing the sunrise, you're not getting out seeing the sunrise or the sunset with naked eyes and with bare skin, as much skin as possible, that's going to elicit a disconnect between your circadian rhythm and the circadian rhythm of each day. Because again, this goes back to returning and connecting to your body, connecting to where we've come from, because we've grown, we live in this cyclical nature with the sun, with the rising and setting, and we've lived under the sun all of our existence. And so only recently have we had this artificially constructed light, and it creates a huge mismatch between our biology, our internal functioning of our biology, and our environment. And that's where you get that dis-ease. That's where dis-ease manifests, is in that disconnect of our in our light environment. So it's getting more infrared light, I would say, namely. So there's red light devices. I personally don't own one at the moment, but I do a good job of getting out and seeing the sunsets here in San Diego. They're beautiful. And yeah, it's also opting for high quality, um, blue light blocking devices, glasses, screen filters. I own a brand of Raw Optics, which is a really high quality brand of blue light blocking glasses that I'll wear at night or even in the mornings too when I go into the gym early. We have incandescent lighting in there, so it's not as intense. Incandescent lighting has a little less blue light, so it doesn't disrupt your circadian rhythm as harshly as fluorescent blue lighting. But yeah, even in the mornings before the sun's up, I'll wear those in the gym and then take them off when the sun comes up. So it's kind of just getting in tune, right, with the sun more. That's the biggest thing I would say for optimizing your light environment. If you can't necessarily do that, then it is having those infrared devices that you can use to start your day and end your day. Those, because it kind of sets that biological trigger to release melatonin at night, and also to convert. I'm forgetting the kind of the terms now, but in the mornings when you receive infrared light, it actually allows you to produce more melatonin at night, because serotonin gets converted into melatonin at night. So the more serotonin you make in the mornings from sun or red light, the more you can make at night.
Yeah, very well explained. I love that explanation. And it's cool that we have both, right? We do have the sun. There's other tools that we can use that can help us if we're not in ideal circumstances. But you
Yeah.
said something that I really love, and we need to be really mindful about. You said get out to get the sun. Like, it's great if you work in an office building and you at least have the corner office and you've got windows, you can see outside. That's something. But that's
Mm-hmm.
still not the same as getting outside. Like, the glass will filter some of the UV rays, and so it
Yep.
is super important at where possible, whenever possible, even if just for a few minutes, try to get that sunset, the sunrise as much as possible, because that can help set up your day. And then even if it's, quick trips outside. I found that when I was working at a big corporate gym, we had lots of meetings that we would have to do around noon. I would
Mm-hmm.
just keep bugging my manager to do outdoor walking meetings. Let's go on a walk. We can still talk about the same things. Like, you can take calls outside. You can make, 10-15 minute little hacks to get outside so that you can get that sunlight during the day. It's so important.
Yes, no, I love that you said that, Casey, too, because that's exactly right. It is for people that are a little bit more constrained, let's say, with work or their circumstances, and they can't be outside underneath the sun all day. Yeah, exactly. It's just finding those times, those 10 to 15 minute increments throughout your day. And, ideally it would be, you could, if you had to take, three, it is like first thing in the day when you're waking up, try and get outside. And then, if you can have one or two maybe in the middle of the day while you're going about. So 10 to 15 minute walks, just like you said, that's perfect, especially after you eat, to kind of improve that insulin response. And also, lastly, sunset or an evening before you kind of begin to calm down and unwind for sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's
And
great. Go ahead.
oh yeah, and I was just gonna say the inherent, because this is all connected again, so inherently tied in with your light environment will impact drastically your sleep quality. And we talked about light, water, and magnetism too, but in this too, it's perhaps as equally it's is equally important here, is understanding the importance of sleep to improve and restore yourself, and to just maintain, yeah, just a state of optimal physical and mental holistic function. So
Yep. Yep. That's great. If anybody has tried to consciously improve their sleep while sleeping, they're kind of missing the point a little bit. If you set up your day to be, optimized for your sleep, the sleep will almost take care of itself. And I also
yep.
think about the directionality of light as well. Like, when it's past a certain hour and the sun has gone down, I really, really, really try to limit anything like overhead, especially the lights we have around the house. But I will keep like a reddish kind of warm salt lamp, and I keep it really low. So if it's
Mhm.
at nighttime and I have to have that light on, at the very least, it's a warm light and it's at a low angle, just the way like a fire would have been as we evolved. There's a difference in the directionality of how we're harvesting our light, essentially.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that too. I love that you mentioned the directionality. That's something I didn't mention in the book. So that's yeah, I appreciate you putting that in, because yeah, you're
I
exactly right to have that little nuance there.
I stole it from someone. I didn't come up with that myself. So whoever I stole it from, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And yeah, let's comment a little bit about electromagnetism and grounding and also water. What are some things we can be thinking about there?
So yeah, going into water, I really want to just talk about hydration specifically because that's what we want, right? We want water to be hydrated. And we all have heard that we're majority of us, anywhere from 55 to 75%, is composed of water. And the importance of that and how we can optimize our hydration, it is understanding that more water doesn't necessarily mean you're hydrated, right? And so it's understanding the aspects behind that. So do you have clean water? Are you remineralizing your water? And are you structuring your water? And so and we'll go through each of those. So for purity, do you test your water for excess heavy metals? I mean, lead, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, iron, even. And so, do you have a filter, like reverse? I have a reverse osmosis filter, or do you have a distiller, a water distiller? Do you have, or just any kind of filter that again removes those metals and also can remove excess chlorine, excess fluoride, can remove microplastics in your water, all of those things to check for purity. That's a big thing, right? You got to have clean water. It's not just quantity, it's also quality. And once you get that squared away, it's also understanding that once you've purified it, especially in the case with like a reverse osmosis filter that I have, that water it's pure water now, but there's no mineralization in it. There are no salts, there are no electrolytes in that water now. So it's finding it's including adequate salts back into your diet. It's having sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, all of the chloride, not chlorine, but chloride, these electrolytes that your body actually uses to generate electrical potentials in your body. That's why they're called electrolytes. So it's having quality salts, quality minerals in your diet. And then lastly, the structure elements. And structuring water, if you're not familiar with that, it is the lattice structure that actually water will take in our cells. So it's also termed cellular water. And this is research that's been conducted by Gilbert Ling and Gerald Pollack, who wrote the fourth phase of water. And so to structure water, because again, water in your cells isn't actually H2O. It takes this slightly different shape of H3O2, which creates this structured shape. To do that, it's getting out in the sun, either getting drinking water in the sun or getting your skin, direct skin under sunlight, because that sunlight penetrates the infrared light from the sun, penetrates your cells and structures that water. Because infrared light, they've shown in research, that's what Gilbert Ling or Gerald Pollack found in his research, that infrared light structures water underneath in a controlled setting. And infrared light, where do you find that in nature? Find it in the sun, in full spectrum sunlight, and sunrise and sunset. So that's a big thing. And then it's also heat and cold exposure. Those are two ways of flushing out what you'd say is bulk water, which is just H2O, but it's unstructured water. That's what bulk means. So heat and cold exposure, sunlight, and lastly, oh yes, raw foods as well. So raw fruits, raw vegetables, raw meats, raw dairy, if you're more animal based, to have these cells, these organisms with their cells are still intact but not denatured by the cooking process, that contain that cellular water. So it's including more of those raw foods in your diet as well. And for your audience, they'll be a little more hesitant for the raw vegetables aspect of that, even maybe some of the raw fruits. But yeah, so it could also be raw meats and raw dairy as well, if you can tolerate that, the dairy and the meats and stuff like that. So
Yeah, cool. That gives people lots of different options, regardless of whatever diet they want to follow. That's totally fine. That's great. And then what
yeah.
about the importance of grounding?
Oh, so yes, for grounding as well, is that gets into the electromagnetic aspect, the light, water, and magnetism elements of this. And the grounding is essentially understanding that your body is a conductor, is an electromagnetic conductor that receives energy, information from the ground when you directly connect with the Earth's surface, like with dirt, with wet sand, not necessarily dry sand, but like wet sand. That's, if you're at the ocean, and the grass, etc. and even concrete, but not asphalt. And so you can either be directly connected onto the earth with bare feet or bare skin, or you can have, if you're in a more urban area and there's a lot of concrete and you're walking around a lot, you can purchase grounding gear. So there's grounding straps, grounding ankles that you can attach to your footwear that have some form of copper wiring, which conducts that electrical current from the ground up into your skin. Or you can have, grounding sandals. I have a pair of earth runners that I love. It's great for the area. And yeah, that grounding is such a huge, and it's again one of those more nuanced things that people kind of consider as more alternative, let's say, or is less important, when really it's, I believe, one of the more foundational elements of what it means to be healthier. It's again to dial in that light, that water, and your electromagnetic environments. Because when you are grounding, so when you're getting outside, you're getting more connected to the earth, you're getting out in the ocean, because the ocean just emits tons of negatively charged ions and free electrons that your body takes in and helps you to reduce your net charge. Because you want to have to speak on that for just a moment, you want to have a reduced net charge, because there's oxidation and reduction reactions going on in your body. And so when you're more reduced, when you're in a more negative state, you're less prone to oxidation, which is, you hear the term oxidative stress, which is also akin to inflammation. And inflammation, as you know, being the one of the foundations of disease, many diseases, heart disease, cancer, neurodegeneration, etc. Those are the main three that come to mind for me at the moment. So it's dialing in your grounding, and also finding EMF protecting, more EMF protecting gear or devices in your living spaces. If you cannot, if you don't live in a more rural or a more distant area, and you can't, let's say, get out in nature as much, if you don't see it as a priority, which I definitely think you should, but it's finding. I'm wearing like one device right now. This is a device. It's an EMF protecting device from Aries, and it pretty much modulates non-native electromagnetic fields from Wi-Fi, laptops, this phone right now that I'm speaking to you with, to slow it down and to kind of resonate in more of a that's more biologically appropriate, let's say, because the Earth has its own electromagnetic field at which it oscillates, which is known as a Schumann resonance, and that's around 7 to 8 hertz, maybe upwards of 9 to 10 at times. And then, Wi-Fi routers, for example, or a 5G Wi-Fi tower emits, it's a couple billion hertz per second. Wow. So big difference there. And it can lead, again, it creates this miscommunication, or this dissonance between your cells and your body, and the information you're receiving from these Wi-Fi routers, these laptops, these cell phones. So it creates that miscommunication in your body, which can lead to dis-ease. So
wow, very well explained.
I know I just spoke a lot there. I hope all that made sense.
No, it does. It's fantastic. You explain it very well. For somebody who might be thinking this is a little bit woo-woo, this is science. This is all proven science. And I just want to go back. We have no affiliation with them, but I love Earth Runners. I would always be happy to plug Earth Runners. My feet are so happy in Earth Runners. I prefer barefoot, but times I need to hike or walking greater distances, or on surfaces that might not be great for my feet, Earth Runners are the absolute best. I love those guys. They're amazing. Great footwear.
Yes. No, and no affiliation with them as well, but I love their product. Great sandals.
So good. That's great. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we went into great detail on all of those things. I think those are very important. I do want to touch on nutrition and exercise. We don't need to go into as great a detail, just because we cover it so much on this show. And for the listener, I don't want you to think that Noah and I are downplaying this. It's just that, Noah, you cover so many other things that are so interesting that don't get talked about enough. But let's maybe just comment a little bit about things we can be thinking of as far as exercise and nutrition, and where they fall in your book as far as priority.
Yeah, so definitely, just I tell this to even my personal training clients in the gym that I work at, like, as far as your exercise protocols go and your movement regimens go, your nutrition is going to give you, that's the 20% that's going to give you 80% of your results in the gym. So it's, if you think about the 80-20 rule. So nutrition, I would say, is much more important just to dial in prior to kind of thinking about wanting to push yourself, or like trying to make a body change through exercise alone, right? So it's dialing in what you're eating, what you're consuming, because, and this relates to my mindset coaching and mindset in general. Like, you are it's the simple idea of you are that which you consume, and I mean that from a standpoint of food. I mean that also from your social, like, what information do you see from friends, from family, from the news, from society, whatever. You you resonate and start to embody those things that you consume. So the quality of whatever it is that you're eating, plant or animal based, it's to me, I find it's more about the understanding and establishing a proper relationship with your foods, with your nutrition, with, and again, that goes beyond as well, to with a relationship with friends, with family, with your exercise regimes, with why you need to sleep or why you get out in the sun. It's about, it goes back to connection for me. So it's about living, and that for me is living with seasons of nature, and to kind of understand us as humans. We are largely equatorial for a good part of our evolution, and so there is that proclivity, let's say, to desire more sun, warmer environments. People love to be in the sun, out in warm regions, less than being in the cold. There's a place for that as well. But yeah, it's understanding that there's a season for these foods, animal and plant based. We are largely hunters and hunter and gatherers throughout our evolution. So we are kind of physiologically designed to consume more animal foods and have that more as a staple throughout the year. And then having in seasonal plants in the varieties of tubers or fruits or fermented foods, for like kimchi, sauerkraut, name different, like fermented vegetable foods, even like some soaked prepared grains like oats. Like if you get source oats very well, you can soak those. It helps to reduce their phytochemical concentration, their anti-nutrient concentration. Yeah, it's living in seasonality, and connecting with where your food's coming from, understanding, again, plant or animal, that this is you have to take life to have your own life. And it's, I think, just coming from that perspective myself, that's been much more profound for me. It's allowed me to live in greater accordance with the cycles of nature, understanding that in order for us to live and to thrive, we have to take life. And that's why, like, hunting is something that I resonate with so much as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think a lot of people initially would be a little surprised to hear that people that choose an animal-based diet or a carnivore diet, you would think they're kind of like they hate animals, but they are by far the
Mm,
kindest and most loving people with other humans and with other creatures and animals. And you talk to people who are in agriculture, animal agriculture, who are killing animals to feed us.
yep.
They love their animals. They name their animals. It is not a fun day when it comes to the last day of those animals' lives, but they live amazing lives. And again, I don't know any carnivores who doesn't really, really consider animal lives and doesn't feel closer to the health of the animal when they
Hmm.
choose to eat those animals.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that stems from, kind of understanding the where we're at today in society with kind of, carnivore, vegan, uh these different ideas of eating, and like understanding where our food comes from. I think, more often than not, those who tend to be carnivore or animal based, even, they, because it's so ingrained in the mainstream to be more plant based or to be vegan as something healthy, the people that see the value of carnivore and animal based have kind of, it comes from a place of awareness, more of increased awareness. Whereas, because being plant based or vegan is just more mainstream to be considered as healthy, so more often than not, people that are plant-based or vegan aren't necessarily as aware or conscious of, again, their connection to nature, I would say, as people that are animal-based or carnivore. Now, obviously, there's some nuance there, but yeah, like you were saying, because when you have to just solely consume, when you are solely consuming animals, you want to source that well, because I think that people who see that, they want to, because we are animals ourselves, and so we want to relate to and have a better relationship with those creatures that we're consuming. And yeah, so I kind of I understand what you were saying right there, and I appreciate you kind of highlighting that as well. I think it's a matter of awareness too, of like our connection and our relationship, that we need to have a better relationship with our foods. Um, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. You keep giving me the best segues, dude. Awareness. You just mentioned awareness. I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about what I would consider some of the most important parts of your book, where you talk about connection and awareness, and how we started this conversation with you talking about our intuition and using our intuition to help us guide our decisions on what we think is healthy. And I love that, but there might be people thinking, yeah, like that sounds great, but where do I start? How do I get going to be able to follow my own intuition? I don't even know how to do that. Generally speaking, we're so, you know, bombarded by media and social media and busy
Mm.
lives and busy jobs and all this stuff. It's hard to find that that connection with ourselves. So how do you set that up in the book?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And that's actually the last chapter of the book. And now that I've looked back on it too, and how I order the chapters, I may have put that first as well, because as you know, again with my mindset coaching, I very much value the and hold dear the the concept that, you know, we are creating our realities each and every day, and that all of our lives, our circumstances, are reflections of how we are internally thinking and feeling about ourselves and others. So yeah, and kind of to come to that place of increased awareness, let's say, and to like make those better or more natural, you could say, intuitive connections and intuitive realizations for your health, for your well-being. I talk about that in the book as finding solitude, as finding spaces to be still and to meditate and to find, you know, to immerse yourself in nature. I think that's a great place for it. And to have for yourself a kind of, to learn what it means to have a form of vision quest for yourself, for your life. And that requires of being alone with oneself, of being in solitude, because being alone doesn't necessarily have to confer loneliness. You know, that's another quote by Carl Jung that I put in the book, where loneliness does not come from being alone, but from having an inability to express how one thinks or feels truly, genuinely about life in the world. And so, if you don't understand and you don't sit with yourself and you don't meditate, let's say, upon what it is that you want or how you want to live, you don't meditate upon things that matter to you, or the kind of relationships that you want to have, when you don't take that space to yourself and to realize your connection to something much larger to you as well, which is what the beauty of nature, of being at the ocean or in the mountains, why we love these things as humans, is you yeah, you kind of can become amassed and kind of like lose yourself in the sea of information that's available to you today through external sources. You know, again, we mentioned the news, you know, television, TV shows, podcasting, even just journals, and all of these external things that can confuse you, because you're continually trying to find something or learn something without yourself, when really you have this inherent power that's already within you, and this inherent knowledge that's within you that you can trust and allow to guide you. But you have to make space for it in your life. You have to make a vacuum for it so that it can come in.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Part of the reason why I invited you onto this podcast is to see if I could swindle some free mindset coaching from you. So this is
Yeah.
a very selfish and very honest question. And I think it's going to be relatable because I know you, and you are very smart and you're always learning. All the citations that you talk about in your book are all very well researched. You are a researcher. Like, I have headphones in pretty much all day. If I'm not with my clients, if I'm not recording podcasts, I'm listening to something. There's a new book, there's a new podcast. I'm listening to something all the time. And I really want to kind of get away from that. Between,
Mm,
I like to see the steps on my phone, kind of like gee whiz. I never do anything with it, but I like to see where I am. The thought of me going, say, on a walk around our lake with nothing, it almost like terrifies me. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like, I always feel
mm,
like I need to be pushing and learning and tracking things, and like I want to try to do some of that stuff without the phone whatsoever. So for you personally, I know you're the same kind of way. How are you able to break away from some of that stuff and allow yourself to not just be taking things in all the time, but to get out and make that connection that you were just talking about?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. Because I mean, I think in today's world, especially as a business owner, as entrepreneurs, and just the yeah, and trying to make more connections in the world, that is such a reoccurring pattern that I've seen, but like I know that other people experience in their lives so often, friends, family, etc., where we are in constant connection. In one regard, it is a connection, because we are able to connect. We are connecting right now externally, but there's an external connection, and there's also an internal connection. Um, and you can understand those things as one and the same, really. And that's, again, we could talk about this tree. There's there's two aspects of this. There's an internal and there's an external. And they both belong to, let's say, capital S, self. They belong to whatever name you want to describe it to: God, self, life, source, infinite intelligence, etc. Um, there are these two aspects, as within, so without. So there's an external connection, which can nourish and grow your ability to and reflect upon who you are and what you want internally for yourself, what you want to feel, what you want to think. But there's also there's also that aspect of you that is seeking to internally, just from a place of silence and stillness. When you find a place to listen to that, what it is that you want, and you create that from within, and you live from that place within, regardless of external circumstances or your external environment. When you create that through feeling and thoughts, through behaviors that you generate, and that come to you, like taking a walk out by yourself, your external world will begin to reflect that, and actually you feel more connected to life in general, because you've tended. I know you, like you were saying, with all the information there is to learn, and all of the connections there are to be made, and all of the work that needs to be done to help people. There are these amazing opportunities, and there is growth to be had externally. But for me, and why I've been called as a mindset coach, is to help people to see that there's also an equally it's equally, if not more valuable today, to return to ourselves as individuals, and to find that place of stillness. Like the name Noah the name Noah means rest in Hebrew, and I find that to be very impactful on my life, because I think a lot of my journey and my mission and my purpose for people is to help bring rest into their lives, a sense of peace. And I think a lot of that comes from being still, and it comes from yeah, it comes from getting out with oneself, and to hear that voice that's always there, that tells you, that shows you, that tells you that it loves you, and that it's okay, and that you're doing the right thing, and that you're on the right path. And it's just a matter of listening to that more often. And so you do that by stepping back, and by stepping away from external things.
I really appreciate that. I'm going to try to integrate a lot more of that into my life. I know that's something I need. So I appreciate the mindset coaching tips for me. Tell us how you're working with people today with your mindset coaching.
Yeah, so we offer we offer two ways. We have one-on-one transformational coaching, that's what we call it. It's which is a form of mindset coaching, where we offer a variety of hypnosis and audio hypnosis, personalized meditations, and just like a form of psychodynamic psychotherapy. So it's just more just talking like you and I are doing right now, and kind of just trying to articulate what it is that we are struggling with, or what it is that is we feel is limiting us, and how we can make these internal shifts to resolve those things. So that is one way we do that. And then there's also community that we have, and the community, that's the one I told you about, where it's, if you're not as keen uh, to interact yet one-on-one with a coach, then we nonetheless want to offer a space for people with similar struggles, or with similar visions, or similar dreams, similar passions, to come to that space and to express themselves openly, authentically, and to make connection, because that's one reason we created Optimized Evolution is not just for the coaching, but it's also for, the healing itself is in the community as well. It's in that connection that we so desperately crave, like authentic, true connection. So that is the two main things. There's one-on-one aspect, and there's also a community as well that we have. It's an open space that we've created. So
That's amazing. Well, it's wonderful work. And I so appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy day to come and teach us about these things. Again, they might sound a little bit woo woo, but they're really proven and they can really add a lot of richness to somebody's life. And me personally, I'm going to take this conversation to heart and try to implement more of these things in my life. So I really appreciate you very much. Fritz, where would you like people to go to find you, to connect with you in your work?
yeah, so you can find my book, The Return to Nature. It's on Amazon. The Return to Nature: Ancestral Principles to Achieve Vitality, Longevity, and Wholeness. You can find me on Instagram at Anabolis, ANAB0LIS is the at, and also for Optimized Evolution. That is, we can check out our website. It's optimized-evolution.com. We have our services up there. If you're interested not in the coaching, but in the community part of that, we do have a WhatsApp group. And so anybody who could be potentially interested in that community, it is specifically catered towards men's healing and having a space for like a men's group. So it's for, if you feel called to that, then reach out to me on Instagram or at our Optimized Evolution Instagram, which is at Optimized Evolution, no spaces or anything like that. Then yeah, we can get you in there, send you a link as well. It's a very powerful container, and we're looking forward to having more people in there and growing it as well. So
That's fantastic. It's so cool that you found so many different ways to help people out there and something that's so important for everybody. No, Fritz, thank you again so very much for everything that you've gone through and understood in your life and to be able to share that message in, again, so many different ways. We just really appreciate you and your work. And thank you so much for coming on our show today. We really appreciate you.
yeah, absolutely, Casey, and thank you for giving me this platform. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to host you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.